December 1909. The royal palace in Brussels glowed with a strange, ominous light. But this wasn't an attack. This was King Leopold II of Belgium, meticulously erasing his own history, burning away the truth of his monstrous legacy. For 8 agonizing days, the inferno raged. Millions of screams, records of severed hands, the blood-soaked accounts of an entire continent, all turning to ash. He reportedly shrieked, "I will give them my Congo, but they shall have no right to know what I did there." This wasn't just a fire. It was a desperate act of purification. A dying king, consumed by the need to silence the past, to rewrite his own story. But what kind of man, what kind of darkness, drives a monarch to become an arsonist of his own existence? What unspeakable horrors lay buried within those flames? The world knew him as a philanthropist, a civilizer. Yet, in the shadows of his palace, he was the architect of an unspeakable suffering. Tonight, we peel back the layers of that suffocating smoke. Tonight, we ask, who was King Leopold II? To understand the monster, we must first look at the boy who lived in the shadow of a giant. Born in 1835, Leopold II was not a child of warmth, but a product of cold, calculated neglect. His father, King Leopold I, was a man of steel and diplomacy, a monarch who viewed his son not with affection, but with a clinical sense of disappointment. In the grand hallways of the Laeken Palace, young Leopold was a ghost, a rejected prince seeking a nod of approval that would never come. Belgium itself was a tiny, fragile nation, barely 30 years old, squeezed between the giants of Europe. The young prince grew up hearing whispers of insignificance. His father feared that Belgium would be swallowed by its neighbors if it did not become powerful. This fear became Leopold's obsession. He wasn't just a boy. He was a vessel for the nation's collective insecurity. He realized early that in a world of predators, the only way to survive was to become the ultimate hunter. His cold relationship with his father forged a heart of ice. While other royals sought glory in art or war, Leopold sought it in ownership. He developed a disturbing fascination with maps, staring at the blank spaces of the world with a predator's gaze. He didn't want to lead people. He wanted to possess them. His childhood was a training ground for the deception to come. Every smile was a mask, every word a strategy. He wasn't born a killer, but he was sculpted by a father who taught him that power is the only substitute for love. The insecurity of a neglected child was about to transform into the greatest humanitarian nightmare of the 19th century. The hunt for a kingdom had begun. Stay uncomfortable. By the 1870s, Leopold II was no longer just a neglected prince. He had become a master of the long con. He knew that in a world increasingly governed by public image, he couldn't just seize a territory. He had to be invited in. The world saw a benevolent monarch, a man who spoke of ending the horrific East African slave trade and bringing civilization to the heart of the Dark Continent. In 1876, he hosted the Brussels Geographic Conference, inviting the greatest explorers and philanthropists of the age. He stood before them, a towering figure of morality, vowing to use his personal wealth to build roads, schools, and hospitals in the Congo. But behind the velvet curtains and the noble speeches lay a calculated, predatory plan. Leopold wasn't interested in saving souls. He was interested in carving out a private empire. He created a shell organization, the International African Association, which sounded humanitarian but functioned like a secret corporation. While the public cheered his generosity, Leopold was secretly hiring mercenaries and signing fraudulent treaties with local chiefs who had no idea they were surrendering their lives and land. He didn't want Belgium to own the Congo. He wanted to own it himself. It was a feat of deception never before seen in human history. He manipulated the great powers of Europe, playing their rivalries against each other until they handed him 900,000 square miles of land as his personal property. The mask of the philanthropist was firmly in place, but underneath, the insecure prince had finally found his playground. The world was applauding a savior, unaware that they had just handed the keys of a continent to a monster. The stage was set for a nightmare that defies words. Stay uncomfortable. As the world's thirst for rubber exploded with the invention of the pneumatic tire, Leopold's private colony turned into a literal factory of death. This wasn't just exploitation. It was a systematic descent into hell. To maximize profits, Leopold's mercenaries, the force publique, enforced impossible quotas on the Congolese people. The penalty for failing to meet these quotas was not a fine or a prison sentence. It was the machete. In a move of calculated depravity, soldiers were required to provide a severed hand for every bullet spent, to prove they hadn't wasted ammunition. Soon, baskets of smoked human hands were being presented to officers like trophies of war. Parents were forced to watch their children mutilated because they hadn't collected enough sap from the vines. Leopold, sitting in his golden palace thousands of miles away, didn't flinch. For him, a hand was just a receipt. A life was just a line on a ledger. He transformed an entire nation into a graveyard of broken bodies just to fund his architectural dreams in Brussels. The philanthropist's mask was gone, replaced by the cold, blood-stained stare of a man who traded human souls for rubber. Stay uncomfortable. For years, Leopold's walls of secrecy held firm. He owned the newspapers, he paid off the critics, and he controlled the flow of information coming out of the Congo. But the truth is a stubborn thing. It bleeds through even the thickest lies. The first cracks appeared not from politicians, but from a simple shipping clerk named Edmund Morel. He noticed a chilling pattern. Ships leaving Belgium were filled with guns and chains, while ships returning from the Congo were overflowing with ivory and rubber. There was no trade happening, only plunder. Soon, the world could no longer look away. Missionaries began smuggling out photographs that would change history forever. Images of fathers staring at the severed hands of their 5-year-old daughters shattered the illusion of Leopold's civilizing mission. The global outcry was deafening. From Mark Twain to Arthur Conan Doyle, the greatest minds of the era joined forces to expose the king with the blood-stained hands. Under immense international pressure, the Belgian government was forced to act. In 1908, they stripped Leopold of his personal fiefdom, turning the Congo into a Belgian colony. The king was humiliated. He had spent his life trying to prove he was a giant among men, but now he was revealed as a common thief on a continental scale. His dream of a private empire was collapsing, and as the shadows closed in, the insecure prince realized that while he could steal the land, he could no longer hide the monster he had become. Stay uncomfortable. We return to that dark room in 1909, where the flickering flames are finally dying down. For 8 days, the furnaces of the Brussels palace consumed the evidence of 1,000,000 crimes. Leopold II thought that by burning the ledgers, he could incinerate his guilt. He believed that if the world couldn't see the records, they would remember him as the visionary king who built grand monuments. But history has a memory that fire cannot touch. Leopold died just weeks after his records turned to ash, hated by his people and cursed by the world. He was a man who tried to fill the void of a father's neglect with the blood of an entire continent. His insecurity didn't just ruin his soul, it scarred the heart of Africa forever. But while this was the story of why he did it, the story of how he and other European powers systematically tore a continent apart is even more chilling. If you want to see the full scale of this geopolitical heist, you must watch my documentary on the scramble for Africa. It's the missing piece of this dark puzzle. The records are gone, but the scars on the Congo remain. Leopold's life is a haunting reminder that power without empathy is nothing more than a slow-burning disaster. If this deep dive into the darker side of history challenged your perspective, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to Uncomfortable History. Share this video to ensure these stories are never forgotten. Until next time, keep questioning the past. Stay uncomfortable.